Welcome back to Colbert on Golf. We're talking with Jim Colbert about the United States Open, which begins Thursday at Chambers Bay in Washington. And Jim, I guess the big broad question here is, and I've heard you say it, this is the tournament that you would most like to have won. And I think a lot of American players feel that way. I don't know about the world players, but you know, I kind of grew up watching the Masters, and I'm partial to it. If I were a good golfer and could play for a living, I think I'd want to win the Masters more than anything else. But that's not what the pros all say. They see the U.S. Open as the United States National Championship. Why is this one the one that the pros all want to win?
Well, you know, Kevin, I qualify. Well, they all do want to win because it's very, very prestigious. Actually, with the way the British Empire was evolved and the way golf evolved with the British, most of the international players would pick what they call the Open, which is the British Open, as being the one most important on their bucket list. But for Americans, it's the U.S. Open. After that, the Masters is one or two with the Americans and the rest of the players from around the world. Some of them will think the British Open or the Masters. Our guys will say the Masters or the Open. But those three tournaments, in all due respect, have more thought of, carry more weight than the other major, the PGA Championship of America. But as far as a guy's career, a major is a major, and they win any one of them.
Well, this is going to be a very interesting week to see the tournament play. Jordan Spieth in the U.S. Amateur shot an 83 at Chambers Bay. There's a story floating around with Patrick Reed that he played in the U.S. Amateur a few years ago at Chambers Bay, and after the first hole, he turned to his playing partner and said, "What'd you make?" And they both looked at each other and said, "We think we know, but we better ask the score." They'd both been out in the rough. They'd taken drops, and Reed found out he lost the hole 9-8 on the very first hole of the tournament. So I don't know what kind of scores we're going to see here. Your thoughts on who may have the game to play a course like this, or maybe more importantly, the temperament to play a golf course like this?
I figure you're probably going to ask me that question, and I wish I could reverse it to you. Maybe I can, because in homework, I know you're in that fantasy thing, and you had to pick somebody this week. So I know Kevin, so I know you've done some homework. Let me ask you, who's your first top two? Or who did you pick?
Well, I picked Justin Rose, and I also like Jason Day.
Right. I have both of them on my list. And if I had to pick one, just one, I think it'd be Justin Rose. Now, I love Justin Day in the British Open. I love him in the U.S. Open. But he really hasn't played that well recently, you know? And so going with the chalk, Justin Rose, you know, he has really, really played well. Now, he lost Deerfield by, you know, in the playoff when he was played so well for 3 days and actually he competed great on Sunday because he didn't have his A game, but he ended up losing in the playoff. And I can't imagine, if I'm picking more than one player, that I wouldn't have Jordan Spieth in there because, I mean, look at the way not only he's won the Masters, you know, and he's trying to win the Grand Slam, but the way he's played, I mean, he's in the top 10 every week. Every Sunday got to tune in to see if he's going to pull it off. If he's not leading, he's within 2, 3, 4 strokes most. So I think you would have to have them. I like both Dustin Johnson and Zach Johnson. Just Dustin because of the way he hits it and the way he's cleaned up his life, and he's been really competitive. And Zach, he's got a real good pattern. He doesn't get upset. He's a grinder. He doesn't hit the ball as high as the other guy. The first thought, though, for most people saying, well, it's just like the British Open, it's the Europeans, but that's the record. The Americans have done very, very well in the last 20 years in the British Open. So I don't think it necessarily favors the British, but I'll tell you who else will like it. But if the greens are 12 or faster, I'm not sure. But Sergio, I mean, you know, he can hit that. He can smoke those shots, keep them low, run the ball on the ground. I think he could be a sleeper.
One of the names we haven't mentioned here is Phil Mickelson, who is a 6-time runner-up in the United States Open. He's still trying to win that career Grand Slam by winning the U.S. Open, and it's almost unthinkable that he hasn't won. He's come so close and had so many opportunities so many times, and he's had success. He's won the British Open. He's had some in the Scottish Open and some others. He's had success on European and links-type courses. They say of Chambers Bay that the key is creativity and remaining calm around the green, that there's a lot of different ways you can get up and down or get long putts close to the hole or things like that. He's one of the most creative golfers and has every little short game shot there is, but I feel like sometimes, and you tell me, I feel like sometimes Phil maybe outthinks himself. We've seen that with a driver a time or two, but even around the green, does he try to get too creative, and could that be a problem on a course like this for Phil Mickelson?
Well, I guess your biggest asset can be your biggest problem if you go too far, in any one direction. And I think you kind of hit the nail on the head there because he really has an imagination which he takes on this type of golf. And, I'm a big Phil fan, and I really like the guy. But it drives me crazy so much with the conversation he and his caddy are having. Before he hits the ball, every once in a while, I expect him to just hand the club to Jim McKay and say, "Why don't you hit it?" But I agree with it. It's just a little too mechanical or analytical, whatever you want to call it. But we cannot say that Tiger might not be able. He can hit that low ball where he doesn't have to, make these big old swings. And he played with Jordan and he played with Tiger in the practice round. And he played with Dustin, and Dustin said, "Man, Tiger was really hitting those irons good and everything." He says, but he was still erratic with the driver, and that isn't going to work. It's just, even though it's a wider course for driving than the U.S. Open, you've got to get that ball on the ground, the humpy bumpy fairways, and keep it there or in the first cut. You can't get it up in the air and get it in the high fescue where the stuff's up to your knees or your waist. So I couldn't pick Tiger, but I wouldn't be surprised the grinder he is and the way he tries to hit so many different shots. See, if you're trying to hit low hooks or high fades or low fades, trying to bounce the ball on the ground, you get out ahead of the ball. You start visualizing where it's going to go, and when that happens, you forget your mechanics, which is perfect. You don't want to be in a mechanical state in these kind of golf courses, man. You got to have your imagination, and you want to be all your thoughts in front of the ball. By that, I mean no thoughts on the backswing or anything like that. Everything's on the flight of the ball, the bounces of the ball, and your total focus is in front of you. That might really help Tiger this week.
Jim Colbert assessing the field at the United States Open, which begins Thursday at Chambers Bay in Washington. More Colbert on Golf coming right up.
You're listening to Colbert on Golf, built by Midland Exteriors. Online at MidlandExteriors.com. Midland Exteriors, we've thought of everything.